I think we are live.
It
There it
says we
is.
are.
Yeah, we are live. It's another Wednesday night, and
Right on.
we've got some people in here, and we'll go right on down. And we got Dust Devil Garage. We got Mr. John Wilburn and SB Custom Cars. Oh, Cope's in here right away. Awesome. Good to see you, John. The other John is back again, and we got Tony's Hot Rod Garage, One Eyed Cat, Fab Race Mod Repeat, and I will be getting to you sometime tomorrow with your question that you posted. Colleen's in here, One Eyed Cat, Colleen, Fab, Dan, Colleen. Wow, we got a lot of people in here right now off the bat. Tony, Colleen, got Buff Del Campo is in here. Good to see you.
Patrick is here.
And Patrick is here. Patrick,
Rick
Colleen.
Salmon is here.
Yeah.
Now,
right.
Rick Salmon, is that a VW in your thumbnail there?
Does it make a bigger picture? It is. That's a
Oh,
split
look at that.
window. It's a split oval too.
Ooh.
That's right. I think it is. It is.
What it looks
That's a-
like. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what it is. You know what's funny is we were just talking about Volkswagens just today at work today, and I was telling about my '67 that I had and how I'd love to race it and how it was awesome, and if they were like, well, if you had that car again, what would you do? And I've always said this: I would love to finish that flipped Mazda rotary mid-engine in that car. So it's a mid-engine, so you flip it and then put a 13B right behind you. So that way you're not hanging the engine off the back. It's actually in the front. And then what I always wanted to do, but now people have already done it, but I wanted to do is take the whole K series, the whole engine, front end, transmission and all, and then literally put it right up underneath the Volkswagen. And some other people have done that. So yeah, but that would have been cool too,
I'll admit it. I keep having these daydreams that I'd love to have something like a Myers Manx or maybe a Thing or something to run around with in the summertime. I just, for whatever reason, I just think that'd be super cool.
Yeah, my buddy had a Myers Manx, but he didn't have the shortened one. He had the full size one. Did you see that one that came out?
I can't decide whether I would want the short. The long one I know is more practical.
Yes.
And the long one is an 80-inch wheelbase. So I mean, it's all relative, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I saw there was a place called Fab Tech in El Cajon.
Yep, right.
And yeah, you remember them? And they had one of those things set out there, and it was just like, man, you don't even have to cut it. You can just put it right on a body and go. And I was like, that looks great. I was thinking about racing. I was like, I could take the whole body off my '67, put this right on top of it, put my cage in it, and I've just dropped 500 pounds. That was my thinking.
After high school, my dad was in Florida. He worked for a shop that built beach buggies, and they would take the body off and cut 16 inches out of the pan and put these bodies on there. What a neat job. I think that just seems like it'd be fun about doing that.
Yeah.
But it would hurt to take all that really nice 60 sheet metal and get rid of it, though.
Right. And see, back then it was like not a big deal because they were a dime a dozen. Now it's like, if I did a Myers, I would do a full size one. That way I could drive it. And that way, if I ever decide to go back, I could put the body right back onto it. Like Baja's, Baja bugs in California, everybody was doing. You get a bug, you just cut it up. But now it's like, man, all those cars we cut up for Baja bugs, it's like, man, it sucks.
I can't imagine the turning radius of one of those that's been shortened. He's turned that thing on a sidewalk. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Oh yeah. My buddy had one on the street that was an actual true Myers Manx. It had cutting brakes on it. So, it was
like a tractor.
It was awesome. Yeah. Because
I bet.
You pop the clutch a little, you pull the brake, you pop the clutch, and the front end would come up, and it literally would turn on a dime, like literally turn
like a zero-turn mower.
It was like exactly. That's exactly what it was.
Nice.
So you had a lot of swing out there in the front, but that was a lot of fun, man.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
We have Andy Wood is here.
Oh, what's going on, Andy? It's his 53 bug, so that's his real thing. That's awesome.
So that's an oval window. If you look, I can't tell in the picture. It's an oval, but if you put a split panel in there, sometimes people do that.
Yeah,
great.
Definitely. It looks like it's a split. It's a small picture, but it does look like it. It's funny, Rick, is that you've got two. Even though I do Mopars, I do them all. I started off Volkswagens, and that's one funny thing that me and John found
Yeah.
out about ourselves at
Oh, yeah.
PRI, uh, what, a year and a half ago or
Oh,
whatever it
yeah.
was.
We
We're
very much like the bugs.
very much like
Volkswagen
the
air
bugs.
cooled it's a different language, but it
Oh,
is so much fun.
yeah. It's the language is 10, 13, 15, and 17.
That's exactly right.
And 36
I was gonna
millimeter.
say at 36, don't forget that.
36 millimeter. You know that I was going through my tools and I only have part of it left, but there was a tool that I had that on a swing axle, to the drum. It took 2 bolts and then had a gear on it. And so you would turn the gear, and then what it would do is it would move the gland nut. So you
Right.
didn't need,
Yes.
yeah. You
It
remember
had a
those things?
section of teeth, and you
Yes.
could put it on a brake drum or on a flywheel,
Yep.
and it will multiply it 9 to 1.
That's correct. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. I still have the teeth part of it. I don't have the rest of it. So
Ah,
yeah, and I was just going through my tools. I've been cleaning up my garage, and I found that, and I was like, "Oh man, this would be cool if I had the rest of it." So,
Mopars are fun, but no one has a story about picking up the front bumper of their Dart and turning the car around.
right, it's the truth, right?
Yeah, I've done that. I mean, Beetles, there are things you do you just can't do with any other car.
Yeah, is that what it's called, Rick? Is it called the torque
Could
multiplier? Is
be,
that really
yeah.
the?
That sounds kind of right.
Yeah, man, I used to have that. It was like the best thing I ever got. I got it at one of those VW shows. They used to have those hot VW shows up in LA.
Right.
And I went and got it there. It was like right from the manufacturer. It was like the coolest thing.
I remember when that was the import car scene, and it was
Mm.
great.
Oh yeah. And that's another thing too, is that we used to have this thing. I think I've said this before, but we had Poway imports, and everything comes in that blister pack, and it was like $1.99 for everything. And man, I got to tell you that it was just like that was you drove a Volkswagen, you were stopping there at least 2 or 3 times a week. No
Right.
matter how bitchin' your car was, you could do a body off the pan restoration, and you'd still be stopping there for whatever reason. Just because they just nickel and dime you. Oh yeah. See, got any questions coming in yet? Nope, nothing coming up right now. How's your week been?
It's been reasonably well. It's been cold. Of course,
Yeah,
not as cold as some people have it. It was, I think I saw 4 degrees today, but
yeah.
it's not too bad. Not too bad. Still too cold to do things outside. I need to weld up a sign frame, and I've had the raw materials, been hauling them around a while, but I'm just, you know what? I really don't want to do that with it 10 degrees outside. So I'm going to wait a few days and get that done.
Yeah, I've actually driven my to work today, and I did Tuesday. I just went in for like half a day. I can mostly work from home, but it was nice to get in there, and I've got that 4-wheel drive truck. But I got to tell you, man, the roads that we just don't have any snow plows here. So the only way the roads get cleared is if people just keep driving on them. And here's the problem: is that they start driving on some of them, they clear up, but then the other ones don't even get touched because now you have like an actual roadway. So you get off on some of these side roads, and it's like, whoa, it's
I,
still
I,
ice.
I kind of burnt myself on something. So a few months ago, I had to do rear wheel bearings in the CRV.
Uh-huh.
And on those, you have to take the half shafts out, take the hubs off, and press the bearings in and out, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, apparently, the rear wheel speed sensors just fuse in with rust over time. And you
Mm-hmm.
cannot get them out without destroying them. I found this out watching people changing those bearings. Thought, well, that's not a big deal. Uh, the wire apparently goes forever into the body, and you can't even find the plug. So I said, I'm going to cut this off rather than destroy those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll, solder it back and put a plug in there later. Well, later, of course, became indefinite because I never missed the ABS. I couldn't care less. But now that there's ice and snow out here, I'm realizing another thing those speed sensors were used for.
That's right.
I went to back up my driveway last week. I'm like, what in the world? I realized I didn't have any four-wheel drive.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've never used my ABS, because in my truck.
Oh, I hate ABS.
Yeah, because I drive a Dart mostly, but there was a time where I was driving and I literally hit some big patch of ice, and it was just the ABS did its own thing, and I knew that once I started sliding, okay, I'm going to turn into it and I'll do this, But the second you touch the brakes, that thing, you could just feel it brrr, like doing all its thing. And I'm just like, oh man, this is not good.
It
But
weirds me out when that
yeah,
pedal's doing stuff under my foot like that.
yeah. You're not in control of it. Colleen's asking, Shane, do you have any videos of making custom oil pickup tube? I do not. In fact, that's funny you say that, because I am going to. When I do Plan Z, I'm making a really deep sump oil pan. I'm taking the truck pan that I had, and I'm gonna weld that sump onto a car pan, so that way I can make it really far down. Plus, I'm going to put a shelf in there, so that way I can keep all the slosh out of it. Because of that, I got to make a pickup tube that goes down to the bottom. But really, it's really simple. If you know where it's going, I'm pretty sure you're talking about an LA on this one. It's probably going to be a center sump if I'm thinking correctly, or if it's a rear sump for your truck. Wherever it goes straight, you can see where it goes straight down. Just add on to that point. And what I typically do is, what's that? Harbor Freight sells some of these things. If you go and get some of the steel for the tube, is I'll get another tube from a car, and then you'll have one piece that's long where the pickup's at. I'll cut it where it's the straight part, a little longer piece, and then instead of just butt welding it up together, I've done this. Is you go to Harbor Freight, and they have one of those little expanders, and it expands it out slightly, or just even you ever seen those tools for the battery connectors that expand it out? It looks something like that.
Yeah.
And you could just slightly expand it out. You just hit it, and then that way you can kind of put it in there, crimp it down, and now you've got, like, instead of just having a butt weld, it's literally a slit fit. Then you weld it, and it works really well. I've done that.
Application for that. I hadn't thought about that. I was thinking, if you found a piece of tubing to put over it, but I like your way better, because in that application, expanding that metal, you would never have a problem.
Nope, exactly. And that's
not that.
I've tried it before, where I put two pieces together, and then, like a slit fit. So I found a piece of steel that was the next size bigger, slipped it, and then welded it. It just didn't really work all that well, because it seemed to leak, because now you've got twice as much weld, twice as much surface that can go wrong. This other way, it makes it really simple.
I like it.
Really easy. But Colleen, I'm going to make a video about that. Let's see. My buddy in Domini's doing bug had a supercharger for it. Have you had one? Oh no, I had a turbo one with the CB Performance came out with a turbo fuel injection kit in the mid 90s. It was literally had 3 dials. It had idle, mid, and wide open, and you had little dials on there. And that's what I had. I had a turbo 2275, and that was the very last rendition of Volkswagen that I had.
That's a good size air-cooled VW. That's a lot of stroke.
Yes. I learned really, really fast at 2332s. That's what 94 by 84. That they're on an hour clock. I was lucky enough to grow up in Southern California. So Potter Machine was literally in Chula Vista, right down the street from my grandma's house, my great grandma's house. So I'd go down there quite a bit. So I used to get all his leftover race stuff, the ones that had the number 3 bearing that was welded up, because he'd weld up all that stuff, and all his extra cool tin. So I would use that. But 2332, when I was driving them, they had 60 hours on them, was about the time limit, because you could only really put 10, I think it was 8mm or 10mm studs in them. I forget what it was, because they would slightly flex because of the 94s. And then what's a 2275? Is that 94 pistons and an 82 stroke?
That sounds about right. I know there comes a limit opening that case up. It starts to get really weak. 94 is the limit. 2275 is where it ended up, but I think the magic combination I came up with was 92, so like an 1835 piston style, and then no, it was 82. There's 92 pistons and 82 crank. That was the magic one, whatever that is. Because then I could run the 10mm studs, the bigger studs, so they weren't flexing. The shuffle pins weren't like at an angle. Right. And it was when it was cut into the case, the whole pin was supported by the case. Now,
this is eons ago. This is like way early 90s stuff. So things have probably wildly changed since then.
The even though it was kind of anemic, the Patriot in me likes a 90.5 by 69. That's a 1776.
Yeah. 1776 with an Engel 120 cam was like the hot ticket.
Yeah.
Because that way you could run a factory rocker arm ratio. Now the 110 cam was what I had my brother's, and it was like a driver. And then the 120 cam was like the hot street strip one. And that was, yeah.
That's like the Volkswagen starter performance pack right there.
It's like I often contribute to like a 327. 1776 is like a 327. An 1835 would have been like your 350, in a Nova. And then a 1915 or like a 2180. 2180 was usually the next big step up that people would have. And that would have been like your 454 if you want to contribute to that. 427. Mostly fellow. Listen to this. Mostly a fellow at the bug shop locally has an AMR 500 blower on a 1600. No big improvement. Yeah, because there's not much displacement in that blower. You know what those AMR blowers are?
I don't recognize it right off.
It's one of those China blowers. They're like the little tiny ones, like this big. You'll see people put them on like on with those little carts, little go-karts and stuff. They'll have a little tiny engines. There's a guy called Robot Cantina. He puts them on all those like one cylinder Predators and stuff like that. So yeah, but that's a tiny little thing. Oh, here we go. Swears and gears. Hey guys, just got a quick fuel pumper carb today back from my friend. He milled the choke horn off. I'll be going to a 2332 VW bug and a turbo blow through. Dude, that's the thing, man. Now, I had a 2332, and before I went fuel injection, I had a draw through carburetor, and getting it started sucked. But I got to tell you that thing was, when it came up on boost, it cooled it. The fuel would cool the turbo, it would cool everything all the way down. Oh man, it was that thing was awesome. That was awesome.
I've never played with anything more exotic than just Weber's, but I can see it. I mean, I know they fly. I've just never played with any of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's saying Schwarz gives, I got an Engel 120 in my 2332 with 1.4 rockers. Yeah, exactly. I had stock rockers, so I think stock rocker is what, 1.1, isn't it?
Something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 1.1. Man, I'm going back 30 years now in my head. But yeah, the Engel 120 cam, man, that's a good cam. It works well.
How much lift does that work out to by the time you go to a 1.4 rocker?
I don't remember off the top of my head what that cam is. Here, let's Engel 120 cam. Let's see what the specs are. It is 435. So 435 valve lift with a 1.1 rocker. So let's just divide that. So if you know what the lift is at the valve, you just take 0.435 divided by 1.1. That gives us 495. And times that by you what's that?
Is that really right? So you're saying 435?
435. That's at the valve. So that comes out to 553. Is that what you got?
553.63.
Yep.
Wow. Yep. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
I did it twice because that sounds like too much, but no, it's.
Yeah, Engel 120 cam, man. That's a 253 duration cam at 50 on a 108 LSA.
What do those heads flow? I mean, what kind of range would you get in with them? I mean,
well, you had the 041s was the hot head back then.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what they flowed. I really don't off the top of my head. But I do know that we had to overcam them considerably because there just wasn't enough flow in the head. That's why the cams are so large. But then I got into these. I got the very first Superflows. Remember those Superflow heads that came out? They had the three bolts for the intake valve, for the intake manifold.
Mm-hmm.
Those were awesome. So I had 041s. I think they were called 044s. I think it was an 044 was like the next one up. It was like this like egg shaped like port, and then the super flows were like this big square thing. What is an O? Let's see what an 041 VW head flows.
The numbers are so interesting to look at next to V8s because you have to remember how light the cars are.
Yes.
And how much gear they have.
Yes, exactly. And that's the whole thing is you got to, that's why you can really overcam them and doesn't make a difference because they're so light. This had air. Okay, here we go. So at 500, it's about 139 CFM, 105 on the exhaust. But now that's an 041 unported. That's basically out of the box. So that's a pretty small. It's not much flow. So at like 200 lift, it's 83 CFM.
Oh, we're talking about engines that are 50 horsepower stock.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
you know.
Yeah, so there it is. Yeah, that's all right. Let's get back onto this. See here. No.
Raining Slant 6 with a chance of cannonballs is asking if we've seen any video from the Engine Performance Expo.
Oh, I watched that whole thing. Yeah, that was good. It's like 14 hours of live stream. It's pretty good.
I think I saw a little bit of that, just a little bit.
Oh, it was. That's right. It was at Straub Technologies. Yeah. How far is that from your place, Shane? Piney Flats. Well, let's find out. I don't know. Flats. You know, I've noticed that in Tennessee, it's such a long state. I'm used to long and tall. This one's long in the other direction. Piney Flats. Let's see here. That's quite a ways. That's all the way on the other side of the state for me. That's it's past Pigeon Forge. I would say
that's a
Nashville,
lot closer to me than Professor P.
Yeah, I would say that I'm about 3 hours from Nashville, and that's another 3 hours, so about 6 hours, I'd say.
That's 3 hours from me.
Yeah, so it's about 6 hours. And that's a drive. That's a long drive. You know that when I was my very last things I was doing on Volkswagens was and when I was at Crowler, there was a guy named was it Rad Performance? I think it was Rad Performance, and I made him some custom cams for the street, and he was coming out with his turbo app, cams and whatnot, and oh man, it was so bitching. I used a lot of the knowledge that I had from V8s and racing them beforehand. I made him some camshafts, and I think it's called Rad Performance. Yeah, that's the name of the place. Oh man, I miss the Volkswagens. My brother just got a Volkswagen too. Did I tell you that? 70.
No.
Yeah, he got a 70 Volkswagen, and it's cherry mint lady, like everyone always says little old lady car. Literally, it's a little old car. It's totally stock, and it's been like that. I know. I think it's a 69 because it's got a 1500 in it. What year was the last year of the 1500?
Somewhere right in there. I'm better telling them apart by the body of the car.
Yeah, right.
I mean, even though there's not much difference, I pretty well can tell by the outside what year it is. There's little tiny changes all over them.
Yeah. What's your favorite looking body?
Probably 62 or 63.
Okay. I like the 67 because it's a 1 year only. It was my first one, so I'm partial to that. But for me, if I could pick anything, it'd be a 64.
Okay. Why is that?
I just like the way, even though I know they're so subtle between a 63 and a 64, I just like the way the fenders come out, and it's not a straight down, it's curved out like this. So when you drop them to the ground, it literally looks like you've shaved off 6 inches from the bottom of the car because it doesn't come straight. It kind of has that flat
64
curve.
had a different marker light.
Yeah.
And 63 had a long marker light with a clear lens and an amber bulb. And that shape, I guess that's the shape you're talking about, that difference right there.
Yeah, it was just awesome. I just liked it. I don't know. But
to me, I like 64 and down because it had the smaller windows and the thicker posts.
Oh,
65 was when they went to the slimmer posts and the bigger glass.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, see, that's what I did like about my 67 is that people like to have their the windows all tinted. I like my glass crystal clear. You know what I mean? Like I like the big glass crystal clear. I just like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He says, I got the rad 4-barrel intake manifold cable setup and wastegate setup. Yeah, yeah. Tell him Shane Polito said hi next time you talk to him. In fact, I could probably text him if he's got the same number. But yeah, man.
Yes.
Last thing I'd be talking about was the awesome 64 bug was my first car.
64, it's a great year. 63, I think, was the last year of the Wolfsburg Crest.
Oh, really?
So 62 and 3 had the Wolfsburg Crest. It was more refined in detail. And 61 still had the one with, like, you could see all the bricks in the wall and the wolf and all that.
Oh,
and so in 62 and 3, they went to a more streamlined version. Then in 64, it went away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my buddy had, now I don't like convertibles or something, but my buddy had a 64 and it was literally a rag top. It was a sliding rag top.
They were the worst convertibles because there was nowhere for the top to go.
Yeah, exactly.
So you had the billboard behind you.
Yeah, exactly. He loved it. I didn't, but he still had, now it was one of those, it was a sliding, rack. It was
okay. Yeah.
It was a convertible, not even a top. It was a
rag top.
Yeah, it's a rag top.
Yeah,
exactly what it was.
You slide it back.
Yeah, you just slide it back, and he loved it. But man, it always leaked.
Yeah.
Even in the morning, we'd be riding. Now in California, if you're never from there, you have dew every morning. Like every morning, there's from the ocean. So we'd be going to the beach, and just the water coming over the windshield, it would be dripping water on you because that rag top starts right about here. So it drips on you. Man, it was terrible. It sucked.
I always thought the convertibles looked like some guy said, "Okay, man, you have your lunch break to make a convertible out of this car. Go."
Right. You're right. And the way it would fold back, it was like, it literally was a muffin top is what I always called it. You know what I mean?
It looks like a guy who designs drawbridges had to design this convertible because of the way the top folded up.
Right, exactly. Yeah. If you don't know what we're talking about, Google it.
Yeah. They would have been far better off to just make a fiberglass top that would just pop off with, like some latches and just lift it off. They would have been better off to just do that because then you could have seen out the back and everything.
Yeah. Okay. Screws and gears. You guys do anything? Talk about 427 big block. Is that big block Chevrolets? I'm really interested in trying to fit a 4.5-inch crank into one with some factory rectangular port heads. Okay. I don't know off the top of my head if that, I've never done that on a big block 427 block. So I couldn't tell you, but I do know that I sold a crap ton of those cranks, but they were for aftermarket when I was at Crower. That was a 4.250 and a 4.5 crank was like the most popular crank we sold for big block Chevrolets. So unfortunately I don't have any answers for that, but I'll tell you what, I'll check it out and I'll look into it. But I do have a lot of big block friends. This is one of those things that Dallas would know, probably. Unfortunately. Yeah. Oh, Stan Weiss. I was actually trying to find my Stan Weiss link. It says he had them up to 155 CFM as far as when he was talking about the cylinder heads, the 041s. Wow.
I see that.
Yeah. 150 up from 110.
For what they weren't bad. The bowl area wasn't bad in them at all.
Yeah.
Because of the way the guides were.
Yeah. We do. I don't know the part number off the top of my head, Patrick, but I will. I'll be at work tomorrow, and I'll send you the part number. And I believe it's a no springs required also. So literally, it's just a drop-in type of thing and go. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I'll text it to you, Patrick.
Patrick, are you going Hemi on us?
Dude, I'm telling you, it just they kick ass, dude.
Yeah. I'm just too dinosaurish, but
I really was too. In fact, I 100%. Here's the thing: is once I started making over 750 horse, I had to change. I had to change blocks literally, and that's what did it for me. Was I just couldn't see spending $6,000 on a block for an LA when I could spend $3,000 on a whole engine, have a block crank and rods that were basically race car ready.
Yeah.
That was it for me. That was the whole thing.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah. It doesn't look as nice. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It doesn't look as cool or as nice and whatever. But
I've done one LS, and I'm not going to deny that modern technology, 50-year newer technology, it's nice.
Yeah.
It's really nice. It's really nice the power you make for the effort.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, exactly. It's like, let's do a rebuild, put a cam in it, make 100 more horsepower.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lawnmowers with more power.
There
basically.
There are. The first Beetles, what were they? Were they 25 horsepower? I think the very first ones.
Yes.
Were
Yeah.
imported. So you literally have mowers with more power.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think you can buy something at Harbor Freight now. It's got more power than that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And probably would get better mileage. Everybody's like, you seem to be I shouldn't say everybody, but there's a lot of YouTubers right now that are taking cars and putting very small engines in them and driving them around.
The Predator thing.
Yeah, doing the Predator thing. I'm telling you, you do that in a Volkswagen, that would just be
Make it fly.
It would be a performance vehicle. It's not like, hey, it's taking me 30 seconds to get to 50 miles an hour or whatever it is. No, that would actually be a performance improvement.
Ron Ward, I believe they made smaller than that. So you're talking about 40 horse with the 1300, 35, I guess, with the 1200. But I think the very first ones were something like 987 cc's or something.
Yeah, it was very small.
Right after the World War II, those imports.
Yeah. See, that's even better. Thank you. I have he has 4 5.7 Hemis, 3 VVTs. My Ram makes almost 400 stock. Yeah, exactly. And you put a cam in it, you got 500 horse.
Hey, I wouldn't deny that.
Yeah.
Well, look how Mr. Haney runs.
Yeah.
I mean, that truck is 4,000 pounds.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And it's still lighter than that damn Charger. Yeah. No, exactly. And that's the amazing thing about it too, is that the engine that was in the Charger literally is bone stock, but with a camshaft, and that's what we were trying to go for in headers. That's basically what everybody was doing when we were doing those converter testings. And I was just surprised when you get that thing up and we had the thing on the dyno at 170 miles an hour, and it got there rather fast too. It's just amazing. Like that blows me away.
I mean, I like the old stuff for nostalgia purposes, but I won't deny it. I mean, Mr. Haney, the stock engine in Haney runs an 810, let's call it 812, right? Uh-huh. What other stock small block could you stick in a 4,000 pound truck and run that? And the one with the cam in it, it was running 750s. Imagine if it was a big inch version. I mean, it's amazing what people are doing for the money and effort with these modern engines. I won't deny that. And the heads are just incredible.
That's where the power's at. That's why you don't have to put as much cam into them. And you just keep RPMing. And then you take that engine and then you put it into, like, say, a 3,100 pound car. And, what was running now 750s, now you're running, almost 650s now,
Professor P, did you ever see the April Fool's video that I did a few years back? I actually had people going for about 5 minutes making them think I was going to put a 4.7 in that 73 Dart Sport race car.
I think I did see that. I did
put it in the car, and I had a video, and I fooled most people to thinking I was really going to do that. And I did it for a joke. I was never going to do that because it's so blasphemous. But I was sitting there thinking, the 4.7 was not very durable. It was the evolutionary step between the small block and that Hemi. So they were trying out some modern ideas. But I got to tell you, that 4.7 for what it was made a lot of power. They just weren't very durable.
Yeah.
And it got me to thinking, I won't lie.
That I did a lot of cams for those 4.7s as far as regrinds, and they come alive with just 10 degrees more duration, both intake and exhaust. And don't add any lift to it. You just add that, so that way you don't have to change the springs. And that thing really came to life. It really, when I look at them, it really reminds me of kind of like it's almost like a Mercedes-Benz engine of some sort, or like the predecessor to the Triton, you know what I mean? In some way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But they made good power. They just weren't durable. They get the
Yeah.
least bit hot. You'd lose a head gasket. I've spun a rod bearing in one.
Do the non-VVT 5.7s with the eagle heads and little cam and poof, 600 horse. If you could find a 6.1 block, I mean, they used to be dime a dozen cheap, but now they're a little harder to find, I guess. But that's what I did. Is I did the 6.1 eagle heads, little cam, a little head work. Other than that, everything in my race car in the 68 Dart is that's all it is. It's all just, performance aftermarket parts. It's got a 6.4 intake on it, with the short valve runner. I'm trying to make it as reliable as possible and make as close to 600 horses as I can. I might even detune it down to 550.
Mr. Mod Motor there, Andy Wood, says, don't talk about his 4.6 Fords.
Right. Oh, man. That was...
Max Wedge Dick Dastardly's here. How you doing? Mopar's, Mustangs, and minivans. How are y'all?
Oh, right on. I got to tell you, man, those... When I was slinging as an auto mechanic, the one thing that would come in were those 4-valve, Tritons, the four cam Tritons. Oh my God, because the one timing chain runs the exhaust cam, and then the exhaust cam runs the intake cam. So, oh man, they would put aftermarket cams in them. So then when you degree them, it's 4 chains of nightmare, because you normally do the intake, then you change the exhaust.
Right.
But you can't do that, because if you do, you get the intake set and then the exhaust is off. You change it to the exhaust and you have to counteract that back to the intake. So you're literally doing every single one 3 or 4 times.
Hey, Mopar's, Mustangs, and minivans has a good question at 735.
Yep.
So basically what he's talking about is how some of your carburetors have a metering block in the front and the metering plate in the back, for example.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking if you could convert that to run a metering block on each side.
No. Well, it would take so much work. It's not worth it, because when you don't have a metering block in it, literally all it is at that point is just a circuit. And the metering block, what that's for is so that way you can have idle circuits, air bleeds and whatnot. When you don't have that, literally it's just a jet at that point. Yeah, you could, but man, by the time I'm just going to go on a limb saying I would never do it. Let's just put it that way. There'd be no advantage to it. Let's put it that way.
My question is, why would you really want to?
Exactly.
With that carb.
Yeah. The time and the effort for it would be ridiculous. And at that point, I believe that those base plates unbolt. So I would just buy another center section and put it on there. But then by the time you build a carburetor from scratch, you could just buy a used one and rebuild it yourself and call it good.
Now, it used to be you could get those aftermarket center sections pretty cheap.
Oh, really? Okay.
And the Hollies, and I don't remember what years. Andy Wood's in the chat, he'll know. But I know that sometime in the early 90s, late 80s, there was a casting problem. And those castings would just disintegrate. There was just a few years like that. And I don't know what the deal was with them, but those were perfect candidates to get a new main body.
Oh, yeah.
And then you could, because it didn't affect the base plates, bowls, metering blocks, any of that. And so that might be a good one if you're going to build, or a good candidate for doing such a thing. But
yeah, he's saying dime a dozen. I picked up a 413 short block and a forged crank for $75. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, Ron's just flexing on us now.
Yeah. Problem is, you got to find that. They just, one of the kids, one of the younger guys at my work, I was telling him that there was a time when you could go to a wrecking yard and all the engines were the same price. They're $79 to $100.
Right.
And he goes, "That's not that way anymore." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Look up a Honda 16B. It's like $410." And then I looked up a 1979 Cordoba 360. Right, that's my metric. It was like $225. And I'm like,
you measure things in units of smog 360s.
Yes, because that's what I used to buy.
That's fantastic.
Well, because back then, a 1979 Dodge Cordoba, that was like they were in the wrecking yards in the 90s for like, we have a lot of military in our area. So they would get these cars, they would rebuild the engines. And after like, if they had an accident, whatever, they would just throw them into the wrecking yard. So those Cordobas everywhere.
All right.
So I know what I would pay for those. And I knew what they were worth and, $79, right?
Right.
And I must have bought a couple hundred of those things easily, and in fact, there was one time where I had 4 of them laying there just because I was blowing them up. But that's my metric. That's how I know. I was like, oh wow, price of inflation. Okay, it's 225. Well, that's about right. And then he's like, yeah, the Hondas are like $400, $500. I'm like, what? They were like 79 at the time. No, whatever. Oh, let's see. What else? We got anything going on here? 3-cylinder Ram went 200 miles with Junkyard. Well, with the rear end howling. Yes, right. Yeah, the wife's Beaver, the 69 with the 7.25 in the rear. I can hear those bearings now. So yeah, they're getting to that point.
Dust Devil's got 660s that have metering blocks on both sides.
Oh yeah, yep. 660s. That was the center squirter one, right? That's what it was. I
believe so.
Yeah, that was I had those on my jet boat for a while. I had a 454 with twin 660s on a tunnel ram. I love it. That thing was awesome. It would freeze. It was 120 degrees outside, and it was literal ice forming on the intake manifold on the tunnel ram. It was awesome. Let's see. Is there?
Dust Devil's commenting on this 246. And by the way, that 246 is the first sheet out of a new ream of orange paper.
Ooh.
That orange is kind of an exotic thing that's not easy to find. And I got it from this old 60s office supply store. And I know it's a very specific kind. It's to prevent counterfeit numbers that give you more time.
Okay, so here, Schwarz and Gears, as far as a Harley 4150E to a 4150 conversion is totally possible and pretty cheap. Okay, even with a single inlet foob, you don't get 4-corner idle without the crazy extensive wire. So yeah, well there you go. Now I've never had that style. I've always had a 4150. So.
Fab Race Mod Repeat. He has that metric, I guess, with the 351 Windsor.
Dude, see?
Yeah, I get it.
You know what's funny is when you started laughing, I really thought about it going, wow, that is a crazy metric, huh? What is it?
I get it.
79 Cordoba,
I could do it with 318s, but 318s are worth about what a moldy loaf of bread is, in the 90s. So
yeah, 318s are starting to make a little bit of a comeback.
They are.
They are making a comeback. I've got 2.
Well, before people really appreciated what went into building them, people were taking it's 340 or nothing. Then it was, well, I'll take a good 360. And now they're saying, well, you know what? A 318 just 130,000 less bore.
Yeah.
And, there's nothing wrong with them. And now that people are kind of having to use them, they're starting to appreciate them.
Yeah, they still make good power. You're going to lose about 30 horse out of it, but you'll be able to RPM it a lot higher,
You can have a very respectable street car that runs really strong with 318.
Yeah, I think 400 horse was really obtainable with 318.
Oh yeah,
if memory serving me correctly. Here we go. He's saying easiest way to get the secondary gents into conventional plates, not blocks. They make for 4150 secondaries with jet holes. I'm doing that on a 600 vac secondary to maintain a very vintage look. Well, there you go. Perfect. Awesome. Yeah. The only time I've ever done anything similar to this is I was tuning a guy's car who had a 6-pack. And the outer 2 barrels, we sent them to a place in Florida and they put squirters. So you didn't get that bog when the vacuum secondaries opened up. You didn't get that lean bog. It would actually squirt in fuel. So, but when you put the air cleaner on, you never saw it. And it just got rid of that bog. Oh, he's saying 318 ran better than most of my stock 360s. Yeah, well, I've only had one 318 that for myself. I had only had one.
Really?
Yeah, only had one.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would like to do, and I've built a lot of them for other people, but it was just because I had a 318 that was just kind of given to me. But then the motor mounts were all for 360s. And in the 66 Dart, the mounts are slightly different. I had to buy them for, who was that company? Schumacher. I had Schumacher mounts in it. Because it was originally a 273 car, and 318 had the same type of mounts, but the
Right.
360 had something different. So I had a
340,
318 in.
360 was narrower on the driver's side.
Yeah, exactly. So then when I started getting 360s, I got that 318 with the bolted up again, and I realized, oh, these are different. Once again, type of things you don't know until you figure it out. And so then that's why I just stayed with 360s. And then because I had a flex plate that had a cutout on it, it was externally balanced. So all the 360s I was getting were literally externally balanced. And so that's why I just ran those, because I didn't want to change flex plates. Those are the parts I had. It was just easy to just do a swap-a-roo. You hang it on the engine stand, take these parts off, drop that thing, put the other one up, put those parts on, drop it in, and you're racing. All right, we're running right through. What else we got?
Fab Race Modern Pete found his 351 blocks and LTDs and country squire wagons. It's a shame that all that source of stuff is gone now.
Yeah. There was a time there too where I was looking in trucks. There was a lot of military trucks that had 360s in them, and they were like the very early 70 trucks. That mystery 360 everyone thought was awesome, and God, all those things I would pine after. I'd be out there, and we'd all be lined up because we knew that the new vehicles were coming out, and we'd all run out there and claim, "Oh, I'm getting this engine,"
Well, while Dust Devil has a great question, real quick, while we're still on Fords,
Sure.
And I don't know this, I'm not a Ford guy, I've never built one. What is it that keeps people from wanting to do anything with the modified, like the 400 modified? Because it's basically a tall deck Cleveland.
Yeah.
What is it that keeps people away from that? Because it just seems to me, and I could be wrong, you guys probably know the stuff I don't know, but it seems like that would be an ideal candidate to make a big inch Cleveland.
Yeah, that's it's funny. You would think, I don't know that, because I don't speak a lot of Ford. I built a lot of 351
Right.
Windsors and stuff, and the 460s, but I don't know on that one.
That's the one I don't know why people overlook.
Maybe it's because of the weight. Is it because it's a tall deck?
I don't know. It's a tall deck, but you would think, I mean, put your good Cleveland heads on that and have a lot of room to stroke it out and make a monster. I would think, but I don't know. The Ford guys will know.
Yeah. Dust Devil Garage asking, question for the future. I'm looking to make around 600 horsepower NA. Not sure if I want to go big block or small block. Which one would be more realistic? I mean, honestly, a 600 horsepower small block, you're building it, and it's a dedicated deal at that point. A big block, it's going to be less dedicated. It's still going to be pretty dedicated. I've had 440s that I've basically rebuilt that made 525 horse. We put a good set of heads on it and a camshaft, and it made 600 horsepower, and you're not really stroking it much at all. I've also done 400s where we put the crank from a 440 in it. I think it came up to like 450 something cubic inches, and literally it was just good heads. It was the I think they were the Victor heads. Yeah, I think they were Victor heads. A single plane on it, and we put a custom cam in it, and it made like 625. On a small block to make 600 horse, I mean, you have really good heads nowadays, but you're still going to make it needs to be a 408. Otherwise, you're going to RPM the crap out of it. It's going to be more than likely 11-to-1 compression. Camshaft is going to be somewhere in the 250, 260 duration at 50. You're going to be on a 108. You're going to have a tall. You're going to have at least a 950 carb on it. So
you'll have an Indy or a W2 head.
Yeah, and you're going to have an Indy or W2 head. So
that's
right
a lot
there.
Of money right there.
Yeah, and you'd just be light years ahead with the big block because you wouldn't need to RPM it as much. And the small block is going to be up in the 7,000 RPM range where you could do the exact same thing with a big block by 6,500. So
the core engine on the big block is going to cost you twice as much as the core engine on the small block. And in the first week, you're going to pass that on cost on the small block.
yeah, right.
So it'd be a lot cheaper to do that with a big block.
Yeah, exactly. And the longevity would be there too. That's just my
without
opinion.
a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well, just Mopar Joe has done just that. And he told me, he said, that thing will last forever. He hardly turns any RPM to run what he's running. So,
yeah. He's saying the 350M and the 400 were really wheezy, but we'll wake up for sure. I was just looking to see if Dakota's timeout. I'm saying that everyone says 351 Windsor 400s are junk. I bet because they're not long, small.
Well, they said that about the 400 too, the 400 Chrysler.
Yeah. Performer maybe discontinue single plane. Oh. And discontinue. Yeah, but you can find
Chris there at 749. He's trying to give us. He's a Ford man. He's giving us some insight on this.
Okay, where's 49?
749. Fab Race Mod Repeat.
There it is. Got it.
The heads are terrible, and it has 3-inch mains. Well, all the big block Fords have those giant mains.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot of bearing face speed, but you shouldn't have to turn it a lot of RPM either. Anyway.
Yeah.
See, I can't help it. I still can't help but think that would be a killer candidate to make a big inch Cleveland and to take advantage of those gigantic ports.
Yeah, and then that way you don't have to turn it.
Right. No. It just seems, which is kind of like a lower buck version of what Dallas did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know. That's one of those things that now you got me questions like, should I build
it just seems so logical because people would say that about the 400 Chryslers. Oh, those are small. Remember when those were boat anchors?
Yeah.
When we were kids, and now it's the big block of choice.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I figured that out when I got my very first big block. I had a 440, and then I got a 400, and I was measuring the bore, and I figured out right off the bat, wow, this has got a bigger bore. Shorter stroke. Wow, that means RPM. That's exactly what I want right there.
I've seen the heads on those. They are junk, and that's what people would use to practice porting. That's how much value they have, right? Because oops, you're out of nothing, right?
right.
But I don't know. I just think there's potential in that. I don't know. It would be interesting.
Yeah.
And use the two barrel Cleveland, but the 2-barrel Cleveland head had a great port.
Yeah.
It was still huge.
Dust Devil saying I have 2 440 blocks laying around taking up space. There you go. I mean, you could very simply, if you wanted to, and just wanted to stroke them, you could stroke them out to 500, 5 something, little head, and then you don't have to turn it into anything and make 600 horse. Oh, here, Patrick's saying that right here. Yeah. We did a stroker for 440, 520 with stealth head, CNC, flat tap of cam, made 650 horse at the flywheel. Exactly. And that way you don't even have to turn it. Yeah, 520 would easily make 650 horse with the stealth heads. Yeah, you would be way up there. Have you put strip timing on a 4-barrel on a 400? It's a 400. Okay, he's talking about Ford. It's a different engine, just the timing set really. Then add Cleveland 4V heads, and you could really have something.
I have heard that the timing on those things was really crazy.
Yeah.
They wanted a lot more timing they were given.
Yeah. Well, just like a slant 6, That's funny, yeah.
Actually, a lot of engines.
Yeah. Here we go. Here's another one right here. 400, 493 stroker with RPM heads, flat tap of cam, made 609. Yeah, at 5,800 RPM. And that's exactly what I was talking about. Is if you 400, I have a recipe. I got to find it. It's a 400 with a 440 crank. And I think it was Performer RPM heads, little touch up on them. And it was a flat tap of cam, and it made like 510. I'm sorry, 610, 615 horse. It was really under 6,000 RPM, 6,200. It was really good. Really awesome street engine. And it made all that in torque too. It was great.
Dakota down there is saying, I think there were never any 4-barrel 400s. No, there were. I believe you could get those in both 2 and 4-barrel.
Yeah. There was someone up here too that was saying it in the 2V and the 4V heads right here. The 351 400 uses 2V Cleveland heads. Oh, he says they never came with 4V heads. I didn't.
The head I'm thinking of is the one that had that terrible EGR port in it. And a friend of mine said what they would do is they would run a rod down through it to block that EGR passage off,
Oh,
and then you would pour it into the rod.
oh, see, you already know way more than me on
I
that.
don't. I mean, I'm just going. I've seen him. He was a Ford racer, and he knew a lot of these tricks. But I'm just curious because it seems like there's some stuff that I don't know why people don't work with.
Yeah, I think it's just because no one's done it and there's no recipe for it.
Yeah, maybe.
It could be. 2V heads are good on the street, but 4Vs are what you want for higher RPMs. But he said up here that they never came with 4V heads. Well, probably from a different engine.
But Professor P, I mean, I know you remember when 400s were boat anchors, nobody wanted them.
Yep.
And 360 Chryslers, those were truck engines, nobody wanted those.
Exactly.
And now here we are.
Yeah, the best block Chrysler ever made from the factory was a winterized 400 block. It can literally handle 900 horse. You get one of those and you stroke it out, and you got something that make almost 1,000 horsepower.
The cold weather blocks had extremely thick main webbing. If you look at the pictures of them,
yeah. What was that? Is it Hughes? Hughes has got the pictures of it. I think it's Hughes engines.
It might be 440 source.
Oh, maybe it's 440
but
source.
If you click, they have a tutorial on which casting numbers were what, and they show pictures of that thick main webbing.
Yeah, that's actually what I would look for, is just right there on the center, right where the thrust bearing's at. You can see it because it's like a wall. There's no undercut. It literally goes flat. He's saying that some of the heads were on the 400s were prone to cracking. So, man, I'm glad that we got 4 people in here, because I'm just stumped. Yeah, just stumped. Here we go. He's saying, you just can't get forged pistons for the stock stroke 400 Mopar without paying a ton of money. Oh, that might be right. They used to be cheap.
Because the only thing they would be for that 400. They're too big for a 383, and it's the wrong stroke for a 440. So it would be kind of a boutique thing. I would think the stroker stuff would wind up costing cheaper. Less.
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, so you're probably right. Now, I remember that I had was it TRW? I think it was TRW. They used to make a piston for that thing.
I bet it was heavy.
But it was heavy. Yes, right. It was heavy. But then that's all relative too, because 7,000 RPM to us was like warp speed. If you got a big block to $7,000, I was like, whoa.
Well, no, Ron Ward is saying Jim Hale started that stroker big block Mopar craze. Okay, and Dust Devil confirms 440 Source has that article.
Oh, okay, good. Yep. Okay, that's what it is.
Not that Hughes doesn't, but I know we can find it there.
Jim Hale. That's a new name for me. Who's Jim Hale? Do you know?
No, Ron Ward is the mayor. He knows everybody.
Okay, yeah, that's a new one for me. I've never heard that name before.
Danny Boyd says the Chrysler 400 was still pretty stout in '74, maybe even later. There's a lot of conflicting information about those engines, and it all centers around the mains.
Yep.
But really, the biggest deal is the cold weather blocks generally have that real thick main webbing. But you go to the 440 Source article, you can see pictures. They have a picture of each one of them.
Yes, and there was a few of them, a few different versions of it too, if I'm not mistaken. And I think what was it, 76, 77, 78, wasn't it?
76, 7, and 8 all went to a common main webbing. I want to say with the 440, they had a thicker web, but some of those earlier ones were thicker still.
Oh, so the 74 is even probably thicker then. Okay.
Well, see, and I didn't used to think that. I used to think the later ones all were, but until I saw that article with pictures, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out too.
Yeah.
That's good to know, because it's always something, you always run across stuff, and nobody's a Mopar guy around here, it seems like, at least in my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
So,
so we have all kind of Mopar people in this chat, though.
Yeah, right. Oh, Jim Hale. So, from Van. Okay, well, cool, awesome, good to know.
Race's stock eliminator with a KSA Belvedere wagon.
Oh, well, there you go. That says it all right there. Stock eliminator. Once you get into that kind of stuff, man, that's awesome. Here, what's he saying here? C4 transmodulator valve goes bad in the second transmission dry in a couple of seconds through the carburetor. But you would have known, you would have seen the smoke, wouldn't you have? I mean, that would have
It should start running bad too, you would think.
yeah, and detonating at least something, you know. We're getting up to some hardcore tech here, but I do got to say something that I'm not going to ever do a Satire post ever again.
Yeah, the winter driving.
I got to tell you, man, I thought
Great.
I'm going to do a nice little Satire post. Boy, did it really push some people's buttons. I'm sitting back laughing. I thought it was funny personally.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for
We're gonna duct tape you and ship you back to California. Thanks for watching.
I really, it was funny, and I'm telling you, it was just satire stuff. I literally was just like, what, like whenever someone's like, when something's just so crazy, you're like,
right.
Why did I come here? And it's this, and then you're like, oh well, it's satire, dude. It's called a joke.
You should do another one and just talk about how this amount of snow, no one could traverse this. They would all dive in there to tell you about the time they drove through 17 feet of snow one day.
Right.
Those same people, right?
Yeah, right before we came on live, that same guy who was talking about go back to California. I put thanks for watching. He goes, what did he say? Oh, that's all you can say. Say thanks for watching. He said something else. Just go back to California. I'm going to literally type when we get off here. Thanks for watching.
Right.
I'm literally going to do it again. All right. So, yeah, here's what we got. So today, we have on the Hardcore Tech, I'm not going to say his last name. His name's Carl. If you know, you know. He's got a Dart and a Barracuda. And when I was at Crowder, I made him a couple cams. And one of his autocross, I believe it's his Barracuda, it's getting a little much for him. He just didn't like how hardcore it was as far as the camshaft. It was 246 something. The thing's a 422 cubic inch, just in a different, I think it's 424. It's a different direction than how I did mine. And it was like 246 on a 110, but it was designed for autocross. It was a perfect car for that, but it just, to drive it just became a little much. Plus, as we get advanced in age, we want something a little less. So I have some of the specs here. It's a 424 small block Mopar. It's a 4045. Actually, no, he did it the same way. He did a 4045 by 4125 stroke. The heads flow like 311, 206. It's a Victor EFI single plane. So remember, that's important. It's a fuel injection. So he's, as far as active CFM, he gave me all the flow charts. So at 200, it's about 159. 300 is about 227. So it's getting over the 300 mark, right at about 500 lift. So it's a decent high velocity head for what it is. It's getting up at that 250 mark by 350. So that's a decent number. It's 10.7 to 1 compression, hydraulic roller, 1.6 rocker arm ratio, 1.78 3-inch collectors, so on and so forth. What his question is that he was looking at cams and he was, he's playing around with different things. So he wanted to know if you have 3 different camshafts with the same amount of overlap. So the overlap is 15 degrees. So you can get there a couple different ways. Duration at 232, 238 on a 110, or 236, 242 on a 112, or 240, 246 on a 114. All those have 15 degrees of overlap. And he was basically asking, how would it react? Where would the power be? And so on and so forth. Now, I always tell people that if you're not understanding how cams are working and how they affect things, you can get free downloads for what's that dyno program, engine dyno, dyno. What's it called? I think I have it as desktop dyno. Yeah, you can get a desktop dyno for literally free. Do not look at the numbers, look at trends, right? So whenever you change a camshaft on an engine, usually, especially on a carburetor engine, you want to have a little tighter LSA. And that's going to send a bigger signal. You're going to have overlap. It's going to allow for scavenging. So you're going to make more power that way. But where this comes into play is that you're going to have 15 degrees overlap both on all 3 cams. So they are really going to react the same. You're really going to be, this would 100% show that you would be trading torque for RPM, but the numbers are going to be so small because you're not gaining anything as far as the overlap. You would be losing some of the numbers though on the low end a lot more on the bigger camshafts, because you're going to be actually lowering your cranking compression. It's going to be going the wrong direction because you're not gaining anything from it. So you're hanging the things out there. The only one, the middle camshaft, as far as if you're looking at trends and how it's going to react, would react the best. That is the 236, 242 on a 112, because you're going to be opening up the intake. Where's my intake? Right here is at, after top dead center is intake right here. My intake is at 50 degrees. And that's like the magic number where you'd want to be. The 232 on a 110, it's closing at 42, where maybe he's got the wrong numbers here. This one's also at 50 degrees. I had a different number here, but when you start closing that exhaust, the intake valve, that's the most important event. Once you start closing that thing later, you're going to basically get that supercharging effect, where you're actually cramming the air in and the air's got way to higher RPM. So really what's going to happen is it's not really going to make any more power. It's going to react the same. It's going to have different sounds slightly on the bigger camshaft. Your cranking compression is going to slightly go down. You're just going to see the power on the top end. The smaller cam is going to be a lot better down low, but the overall camshaft would be the one literally right in the middle. It would do the best of both worlds. As far as numbers, you're literally going to be splitting hairs on all three of these camshafts because the heads flow so well. If you had crappier heads, you would definitely see a lot more difference between the camshafts. But because the camshaft, the heads are so good, a cam is only really going to be telling it where to make power at. But since the heads are already there, it's just going to make power everywhere anyways. Are you following me guys on that? Does that make sense so far? Okay.
It's just where I love to see the relationship of where everything moves. It's like what you were telling me, how you run such a tight LSA on your slant 6 cams.
Yep.
Because your total volume of overlap, the overlap triangle, is what you're actually looking at.
That's exactly right.
Instead of getting wrapped up over that number of the overlap of the LSA itself.
That's right. It's all about that triangle number. And that's what I've always told Carl the same thing. And he was like, well, what if they're all exactly the same? And I've often told him, I was like, it's well, not necessarily, but I've told other people that if you're making the exact same number, you're really robbing Paul to pay Peter. You're just going to move things like this. But it's such small numbers. It's not going to make a wild change. And especially if you've got a really good head. Here's case in point. On my Gen 3 Hemi, that thing flows 340 CFM. I could literally put almost any cam I wanted to in that thing, from anything from 220 to 230 degrees of duration on the intake. It really wouldn't make a hill of beans of where the power is going to come in at or anything. It's going to run out the back door to about 7,000 RPM, anywhere from 220 to 230, a duration of 50 on the intake, because it's got so much airflow. The only thing you'd be giving up is the torque on the bottom end because it's got so much airflow. So that's why I always tend to have a smaller cam when we have really good airflow, and it doesn't really make as much of a difference.
Modern heads have been a real game changer on what the cam has to be expected to do.
Yeah.
Bad Tree Blake is here in Tony's Hot Rod Garage.
Oh, hey, what's going on, guys? Okay, well, I was talking here. Did we get anything? I would love to do a stock stroke. Nope. Did I miss any questions? TRW. Oh, here we go. TRW slant 6 pistons for a small 4.43 and 30 over large flop out with no valve release, 465 grams. You know what? I have a set. I don't know the exact grams of those, but you know what? This weekend, I'm actually for that slant 6 I'm building, I'm going to be doing something on this, but the pistons are going to be on the rods already, and I'm going to show you how to balance them so that way you don't have to press them off the rods. So you can literally have an engine that you have and you can blueprint it without taking the pins out. So I'm going to show how to do that. But I can usually guesstimate because those rods are right in that They're very heavy rods.
I'm
Typically.
weirding out Tony and Blake because I'm wearing a coat instead of a hoodie today, so it
Oh,
automatically makes me look cold.
oh, here we go. So, sort of tech related. There's a guy with a GN who put a ZF-H90 that has manually controlled. I'm still trying to find the form. Yes,
Huh.
there's a lot of people going to this transmission. Not necessarily the 90, but they're going to the 70.
The 8-speed.
Yeah, the 8-speed. Yeah, there's a company who makes a controller for this, so you can put a clutch in them. So the converter
Really?
basically, yeah. So what it is it's not a clutch like you would think. It's an electronic clutch. So the converter stays locked up. Since it has, it will unlock all the clutches inside the transmission. So you can basically do whatever you want. People are running them in drift cars. So the BMWs run the 70. They run a 45 also, which is like a ZF8 HP 45. The Mercedes Benz all run that. So it's really popular for some of the drift guys. So they can get a really underpowered car, like say a BMW 6-cylinder that's not turbocharged. You have 8 speeds, so you can drift it, and then you can really hammer the gears. So you can have it to where you have to use a clutch to shift the gears, or you just you use the clutch to get it going, then you can just hammer the gears back and forth like the old school clutch flights, so it's
that's what's coming in the new Dodge trucks, that 8-speed.
Yeah.
Cope has one, and I know there's 2 different first gear ratios you can get. One of them is as low as 525 first gear.
Yes.
Which is crazy. And he says, and I've ridden it, he said it feels like you're in 4-wheel drive low when you pull out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I think the 70, the standard gear on is like 430 or something like that.
Oh, it's nuts.
Yeah. So that's why some of those guys, they can run the 262 rear gear, and that thing's
Right.
double overdriven. So yeah, that's a lot of gears, man. That's
But
why
then
they run so well.
what kind of torque converter do you run with that if you have that much gear for first?
They really are. They're almost like 1100 RPM. They're literally stock.
You just need a clutch.
Yeah. And yeah, you don't even need that at that point. And
Right.
that was the biggest thing when I was making that converter for that Charger, was because it's got such a numerically low gear. Obviously, when you have that much gear stacked up, you need a really high stall to even notice it, right? So that was the magic, was trying to find that number to where that stall would actually work, where you could get 3000 RPM out of that converter. So
Now, I've never been into one of those, but on paper, they actually look like a really workable design. Now, Turbo Tom, I don't know if he's in the chat. He has built some of them.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing people say is that those are good ones to build. They're not overly complicated inside as you might think.
Yeah, no, they're really simple. I've built, there's a guy out here who had the fastest Hellcat for a while, right? And, a stock Hellcat, unmodified. And, I did a lot of work with him, and that's all he does. I'm trying to remember his, I think it's B&D transmission, right? And he built a few of them, and I was there, and then literally it's imagine when you have a 904 and you build all your subcomponents and then you just kind of stack them in there. It's literally like that, but without any bands. Literally,
I guess it's 3 sets of planetaries. Because it's what it seems like it would be.
3.
2 times 2 times 2.
I think 2. I think there's 4. I think it's 4. I don't know.
But it looked pretty simple on paper inside, and without the bands, like you said, no bands.
Yeah, and then there's 2 shells that stack inside of each other. So literally you build the shells, you stack one, you put the other one in, and it's literally done with clips and a few other things. And the valve bodies are all interchangeable, the 90s, the 70s, and all that. They just have different valving and how the solenoids work. So and the pump is change driven, so it's really a simple transmission. And the biggest thing that people do when they build them is break one of the shells, the little shells like on the outside, because they have a clip in them. So there's a special tool to get that clip out. You put a screwdriver in there and you bend it out, you'll break that thing.
I like raining slant 6 with a chance of cannonball. This is our cultured chat here. That's the Zyx Friedrichshafen transmission. Did I get that right?
Is that it? Yeah, right.
I like that.
Shane did a. Oh, here we go. Shane, during my recent trip to Claysmith, I learned that cam are parkerized for oil retention. What's your opinion on this? And
Hmm.
is it industry standard? Yeah, no, we parkerize everything. Yeah, absolutely. Parkerization is not only for oil retention, but it also helps with break-in um, and wear. So yes, parkerization is awesome. Yeah, we do every, and then we also nitride our cams, makes them harder, makes a harder surface on them too. Um, and I believe now I can only speak from Crower, and I can only speak from Comp. We all of them are parkerized at our flat tap for those two companies. It would be hard pressed to find a company that doesn't do them as far as flat tappets anymore, because it's everybody's doing everything they can to be overly sensitive on their camshafts nowadays, because there's been the rash of flats going flat. But I have my own opinions on why that is. But so a lot of these things are really over checked now. Let's put it that way. So I think it's the industry standard. Personally, it's my opinion. I don't know any other cams that. Oh, and I can tell you that Schneider does it. I do that. I know that for a fact. And there's another one too up there in LA, Escuderian. I know that they do it too, because I've seen them. I've been to those places.
Bad Tree Blake is headed out, having a good night. Later, Blake.
Oh, take it easy, man.
And Geared for Torque has an interesting question here.
Yep,
He
go for it.
recently bought a 1950 Chrysler Windsor. That's a stylish ride. It's all original with a Flathead 260 and a fluid drive transmission, and the engine is stuck. What would you suggest for a cheap, reliable cruiser drivetrain? Well, I mean, you can always do a 318 and a 904. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like the cheapest, most reliable, go anywhere, do anything, dirt cheap thing you could do. You have any other ideas that might be more exotic or more fun?
Dude, that's exactly what I was going to suggest. Is just go find yourself a Magnum 318 out of a truck. Literally take the whole thing out from, like,
Yeah,
say, a 90. What was it, a 93? So that way it's still hydraulic. You can still has There's no electronics on it. It's got three
yeah,
wires that goes into it,
yeah,
and it's a 318. Take it out, put it in. You have an overdriven lockup converter with a 318 Magnum head, hydraulic roller, everything. It'll run forever,
yeah.
and it'll make decent torque. And that's what that thing would need. You don't need a bunch of horsepower.
And that car would be happy with a 904. And when I say a 904, a 999 is basically a low geared 904 with lockup. But you could
Yeah,
get that combo cheap and drop it in there, and it would work all day.
yeah. You don't need the A500 tranny. You could just get an A99, something in the late 70s also. But yeah,
Or
anything
you
with
could do the A500. You could.
yeah.
I think what is it, 95 and earlier might be the hydraulic.
Yes,
Uh,
exactly. At
but
93,
yeah,
94. Yeah,
yeah.
92, I believe, is when they changed. There was a problem with them before that, and they fixed it. So there was 3 years right before they switched to the electronic was the year to get. I
Look
think it was
underneath of it and make sure it has a speedometer cable, a
yes.
cable driven speedometer,
Yep.
and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's another way to yeah, too. So, yeah.
Well, the other thing too is you say the first of all the Flathead 6260. I know nothing about one of those. All I
Nope.
know is that there's one. I know where there's one in a hedgerow. That's about all I can tell you. But that fluid drive transmission from 1950, the Torque Flight, the 904 came out in 60, 727 came out in 62, and he really for something reliable, cheap, reliable cruiser thing, you really want a descendant of a Torque Flight so that you
Yeah.
can get parts and something easily serviceable.
Yeah, now the only thing he would have to change probably is the drive shaft on this too. Um,
Yeah,
and the rear end, is that one of those old funky ball and socket type of?
it's probably that thing that looked a whole lot like an 8 3/4 but isn't.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
if you want to know another YouTuber who has something like this that you can, I'll tell you who you need to watch. Big Mike's Hoopty Barn put a 318 with a truck 4-speed in a 50 or 51 Chrysler or
Hmm.
51 Dodge. And he will be able to show you what happened, what he did with the rear end, how he made all that work. Big Mike's Hoopty Barn. That might be a place to look.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a ball and trunnion type in that one. Yeah. I did see here. Oh, where
Well,
did
if you want a rear end that's simpler and serviceable, just get like an 8 1/4 or something and stick in there.
um, or since we were on our Ford trip, here's another one. 302 Ford C4 tranny, 94 Ford Explorer 8.8 rear end. I say a 302 Ford because the 50 engine bay is really narrow and a 302 is tiny and it will fit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a bad way to go.
302 is the tiny little thing, but a 318 is pretty narrow too, you know.
Yeah.
And the rear, oh, and he says, and the rear end is exactly the same width. So there you go.
It's not a bad recipe.
Yeah. So at that point, just go get a Ford Explorer.
So Michael Schmidt brings up a really interesting point I hadn't thought about. 51 and 52 are slightly wider than 49 and 50 because the first Hemi came out in 51.
Oh,
so that makes a difference right there.
Okay. Well, there you go.
I love Jay Malone's comment there at 820. Is it true C4s can't neutral drop? False. Any transmission can neutral drop at least once.
Once. One time. Can do it at least one time, right? Oh man.
But in all seriousness, you know how you give the safety disclaimer, don't try this at home? I will tell people that neutral drops, you're risking your foot. Depending on the transmission, you can blow up a drum and you can lose a foot.
Yes, on a 727, that can happen.
You theoretically could on a 904, but the drum is so much lighter and the sprags have a better design. I've never seen it. But on a 727, these things grenade the drum all the time. So
and
I always add that when people talk about neutral dropping. You risk more than a transmission if you break one.
Your foot and your thigh and your leg. Just look at some of the videos. They go through the roof and they come through right through the floorboard. So it's I've seen the aftermath. I've never physically seen it, but I've seen the aftermath.
So John Cope, who was just in the chat here, his 68 Cornet, I've seen in person the hole that went up through the transmission tunnel and up through the cowl. And it literally looks like as much damage as if somebody had shot a shotgun slug up through it from under the car.
Wow.
And so if your foot's in the way, you're going to suffer a lot of damage.
Yeah. He's saying a lot of changes to Explorer power changes in the Flathead Mopars. For the hardcore Flathead Mopar guys, there's tricks to be made with the 49. Okay. I get it. I mean, look, I totally understand. Yeah, if you could then make an adapter plate. You know, how hard could that be, right?
Well, let me tell you, I'm breaking out the Sawzall before I'm putting Ford stuff in my Chrysler, but that's just me. Your mileage may vary.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Now Aunt D used to neutral drop his 904 behind the hopped up slant 6. Yeah, and you can, and a 904 is less risky actually.
Yes.
But it is the same power flow. And if you manage to spin the sprag in that 904, even though it's pinned in or bolted in, and it is a better sprag design, you are risking spinning that drum and breaking it. Now, a 904 drum is much smaller and lighter, so it's not as likely to happen. But
yeah, it's funny you say that because me and you are so on the 904. We fly the 904 flag.
I love the 904.
Oh, me too. It's just everything's just better about it. I did make the mistake one time of getting a later 904. It wasn't an A99, but it was a later 904 where it actually the sprag bolted in. It had the 6 bolts in it, right? And so it's got a different output shaft altogether. And none of my stuff bolted up to it. Oh, it was such a pain in the ass.
So, well, okay, I'm a fan of the 80. I think it's 88 and up 904. It actually has 11 bolts. The bolt to sprag in.
Oh, okay.
Because you've got 6 on that output shaft support, but then you've got 5 more. There's one missing, and the other 11 are all there, and they all go through the case. It's extremely strong.
And that's a true 904. That's not like an A99. That's true 904.
A 998's like that.
Okay. Wow. That's awesome. I have a 904 out here, or it's a case. I'm not sure what it is, just a shell. And I was looking at the sprag in it, and it's got, I think it's got 8 bolts in it.
Yeah.
I think it's 8 bolts, and it literally is bolted and pressed in. So,
The early 904s had 2 big rivet-like pins.
uh-huh.
I think they had 2 or 4. So even the older 904 still had a superior sprag retention method than the 727s.
Which doesn't make any sense, right?
But they did. They sure did.
Did you ever put in a bolt-in sprag into a 727? Have you
I
ever
did.
done
I did that this spring, and I'll tell you something I did not know. I had no idea. Cope told me this. They would machine a groove around the outside of the outer sprag race to
Mhm.
catch the shavings when they pressed it in the case at the factory.
Yes.
So when you take that sprag out, I'm like, what is all that trash? Like, I just hot tanked this freaking thing. Where did all that come from? It came when it took the sprag race out. He said those shavings haven't seen daylight since the Kokomo, Indiana factory in
Yeah.
1973.
And you know what's crazy about that too is that when you bolted one of those in, you got the kit, those little tiny ferrules that they have you put. Have you seen those?
Yeah,
It
yeah, oh
literally is
yeah.
a ferrule, and you're like,
Yes, it's an oil pressure barrel.
yes,
Only bigger.
exactly. Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's how it is. You can always tell if someone's actually done or not. They're like, yeah, they're little tiny brass ferrules in there.
It's the first one I'd done like that, but it's a neat process.
Yeah.
And so you make it almost as good as a 904 came with stock.
Right. It's the truth. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
really.
Oh, yeah. Michael Schmidt, don't we all? He says, I have an embarrassing amount of speed, parts, and extra parts for Flathead. I'm entrenched and almost sleeping on vintage parts. I have to tell you that I'm just getting slant six stuff by the dozens because people know that I'm a slant six guy now, and they just want to give it to you.
Yeah.
It costs more for them to throw it away than to give it to you. So I've got them stacked up like cordwood out there, and I just need to get them going.
I'll say hi to Scrap Iron Racing. Thanks for swinging in.
Oh, is he here?
Yeah, we hope to see you again this year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. See here. He's Michael, guys are hot for those flathead supercharger kits if you're looking to lighten up on speed parts.
Scrap Iron Racing brought lots of class and sophistication to our annual gathering with that beautiful roadster.
Oh, that's him.
Yes.
Oh, that was cool.
Yes, indeed.
That was my boy just actually so did Roxy. They love that car. That was he was a 1920. Was that the one him?
I don't know what year it was. I just remember it was really nice.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, that car was awesome. And he went down the track. What did he run?
I don't remember what it ran. I just remember it was nice looking.
Yeah. Well, would you run if you Scrap Iron Racing if you posted up?
What did that turn?
That'd have been cool.
He has a Mustang with a Flathead V8 in it too.
Really?
Yes.
Dude, that's cool.
Salt
That's like
Flats car.
dude, that's pretty good, man. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that old older engines in cars thing. I don't know. I just think they're more reliable.
32 Roadster ran 8 flat. Sold the Mustang.
Oh, ran 8. Wow.
8 flat from a 32 Ford Roadster. That's freaking cool.
Wow,
that's moving.
That's moving.
Yeah, it is.
That's pretty good. That's wow. Wow, that's shocking. That's faster than the charger I brought up there.
Right on.
Wow.
Oh, now this is something I'd like to see go down the track.
Mm-hmm.
Dakota's Timeout. Their dad has a 52 Ford 8-in tractor with a 239 flathead V8 in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing will fly. It goes faster than tractors were ever intended to go.
Hey, John, I just got an email here, and it's a legitimate question, but I know the answer to, but I'd rather have you. This gentleman's looking at bringing multiple cars. He has one entry into it, hasn't hit the 500 yet.
Okay.
But he wants to know can he bring multiple cars under that same number?
So the entry fee is per car.
Okay.
But each entry fee includes one car and one human handler. So if there's 2 cars and 3 people in your party, you would pay 2 registrations, includes 2 people, and then 1 person would need a spectator ticket.
Yep. I knew the answer. I just wanted to hear it from you. So there you go.
People 12 and under are free.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to give them every incentive to, want to bring their own iron when they get of age to drive.
Oh, speaking of which, how old do you have to be to drive the monkey bikes? What's the age?
That's a good question, because I know the AHRA requires a driver's license for automobiles, but I'll have to ask on that. I'm not sure I've had anyone ask.
I have to ask because I've been looking at some things, just checking things out, and one of my siblings, or I shouldn't say siblings, one of my offspring, has made interest in racing a monkey bike. So
Cool.
I told him, I was like, well, by the way, if you don't know, I have a boy named Cash, and there was a whoever was next to us, I forget his name, but he had a little electric motorcycle, and I remember I was sitting there hanging out, and then my kids went missing for a couple hours, and then they show back up, and the next time I see my kid, he's riding by on this electric motorcycle. They're just hauling ass, right? I'm like, well, if you want to break an arm, it's fine. Just at least wear a helmet, Now he's been riding quite a bit, and so now he's like, I want to do that racing, Dad. And I was like, well, let's find out what the age is. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll inquire into that.
Yeah, because that would bring in some kids then.
Yeah.
Just thinking.
Dakota, I've never driven an 8N. My uncle has one. I've never driven one. And yeah, I know it would outrun a lot of cars there. You're absolutely right. That thing will move.
Oh, right here. Is that what you're saying? Tractor?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that tractor is something else.
What is it called again?
If you want to see the tractor, I did a video on it on my channel when I went to visit Dakota's timeout.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, and the tractor's in there.
Yeah. Okay. Shane, you're going to have to add 100 pounds of weight to the monkey. No, that's fine. But I can add it wherever I want.
Oh, yeah. Professor P doesn't care. He can always compensate for that.
I can add it wherever I want. It just says the rules are very, very loose. It just says it has to weigh this much. That's all it says, right?
Yeah, the rules have a lot of room in them. People just don't explore.
Yeah.
And by the way, speaking of that, yes, we do have a target time frame of getting 2024 monkey bike rules released. Yeah. They're still not up on the site yet. They need some tweaks.
He's saying too fast to plow, too slow to drive. The Ford N-Series tractors actually scoot down the road. Really? Okay. Ford N-Series tractors. I'll have to check that out.
I see Lars is in the house. Howdy, Lars. And Dust Devil, now he's on to something there.
Right here?
At 8:32, yes.
Right? Yeah. I got to tell you, Cope, he just ruined Cash now for racing. I'm telling you, which is good. That's fine, but ever since then, that's all he talks about. When's the No Name Nationals? When are we going back out to the track, Dad? Like, well, we're going to go. There's snow on the ground right now, but we're going to go. Now he's like, I want to race. I want to do some racing. So, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, right? Right? It starts. Dizzy Izzy, a pulse jet class. Could you imagine that?
I can imagine Dizzy running a jet engine. That would be pretty wild.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a pulse jet? You ever seen those on the internet?
No, not that I can recall.
So the Germans made these things called pulse jets, right? They were actually they called them a buzz bomb, right? And there's literally no moving parts in them. So imagine a U, right? It looks like a U. One's here and one's down here, and it's got an expansion chamber. And you put fuel into it, you ignite it, and it puts thrust. Literally, there is no moving parts in it.
I like that.
Yes, they're called a pulse jet. You should check them out. We made a few of them when I was in college, but yeah, they're amazingly loud, and just incredibly loud, and they look like a horseshoe if they're made the way they're. And they're Germans call them buzz bombs. So yeah, you check them out.
I'm by the way, Dizzy,
Oh.
I'm continuing to renovate in here, and I do have the OG Dizzy is the angry vagrant decal going up. And so I'm working on another panel to put stickers right here. See, I don't even have to do it with the phone. I can do the zoom in, super analog. It wouldn't be complete. It wouldn't be complete if I was on and I didn't do that at least once, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing John Wilburn's 2.0. John Wilburn 2.0 now. Oh, that's funny. Thank you, Michael Schmidt. I appreciate $10. Helps me keep, once again, the lights on. There we go. So thank you. I appreciate it. What is Sherman Overdrive? Let's see, did I miss anything going through here?
Colleen is asking for Max's question about the AFR. So where is Max's question about the AFR?
I don't know. I don't know.
Talking about Max Wedge, Dick Dastardly?
Oh, right here. Just bought a cheap AFR. YouTube people say junk. Got to be a little helpful. That can't be it, because that's just
an air fuel ratio gauge.
Yeah.
Or is that a typo for an AFB?
No, bought cheap. People say junk. No, it's AFR. So AFR is an it's an air fuel ratio. Is what it is. I have one that goes onto my phone. Fast sells them, and here we go. It is called it literally is just an app like this, and it connects to your car, and then as you drive down the road, it does like this. Can you see that? So that way you have your air fuel. This is just in demo mode, but basically it just kind of gives you air fuel meters, and it's got two, and then it has a graph on the bottom, and it records it. So as I go down the road, I can record it, and then I have a little predetermined track that I go down, and that's how I set my air fuel mixture, and it works awesome.
You know what? Yeah, a lot of guys will have the tachometer up there where they can see it, right?
Yep.
You can tell Dallas is a real racer because he has his air fuel ratio right there on the A pillar, right? Yep. At all times. And there's a lot of value to be gained in getting that down. And ask any serious tuner. That's the mark of one. So yeah, man.
Yeah, AFRs are awesome. In fact, I was always all about sight. Now, AFRs in my lifetime, they were very expensive, and they were like narrow bands. It was literally yellow, green, and red lights. That's what you had when I had my Volkswagen. And then I went from that to my first one was like in the mid 2000s. And once I started tuning with AFRs like widebands, I never went back, because you can literally get them dialed in a weekend, and a carburetor, and then you can get your then you can start tuning for mileage. But yeah, exactly. I agree with you 100%.
Well, 38 POS Racing Racer Ray there is asking where that app gets its data.
Oh, there's a on the car. It has has a little computer that sits in the car, and it connects to the AFRs into the exhaust, and it's on a Bluetooth, and then it's got a power source, and then it comes off of its tack, and it's got about 5 or 6 different inputs on it. So there's a little thing on it. You know what? I'll put a link to it, what it is here in after we get off here. I'll put a link to it so you guys can check it out. But it's pretty awesome, and it's always on too. So when you start the car up, it warms up the O2 sensors. You start it up, and then it's instantly reading. So you don't always have to have it on, but it's always reading. And then you can tune into it and then say, oh, the car did something funny, and then you can tune into it and go back and find out what it did and see if it was fuel or whatnot. So, and I've actually caught a lot of problems by having noticing my needle and seat were sticking, and it was just running dead fat, and I couldn't tell because I'm at 2,500 RPM, but it was literally just dumping fuel in there, but still running fine.
That would save you on a lot of engine damage.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly.
Michael
Yeah.
Schmidt has a good question that I would kind of reformat into simply saying, can you explain the difference between the wide and the narrow band O2?
Um, how would I explain that?
He's saying that in short, wideband tells you the actual ratio.
Yes, yes. Well, it's like I don't. I could go into like the lambada part of it. How would you? Okay. One is reading like
Do I need to put that the L symbol up there on
yes,
the board?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, the narrowband. He says it right here. It's worthless data. It really is because it's not really telling you anything. Really, it's just telling you if it's here. Where the wideband tells you everything all the way across, and it's hard to explain. It's one of those things I don't know how could I explain this any better. One is like lambada is another way of reading it, and it's just a mathematical formula, and it comes out. But the narrowband literally is just kind of like almost like a pendulum, kind of like you're like, oh, I'm close, oh, I'm far away, I'm close. One's an actual reading.
When you say that, I always think of Revenge of the Nerds, lambda, lambda, lambda.
Right.
That's just what makes me think of.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Oh no, that was that one.
Yeah.
Here, right here. Yeah, Pulse jets got a lot of German pilots and ground crew killed. Ever seen a field of them using a two-part fuel where they were use eyedroppers to drop the second single drop of part B into dish up cabal? You should you really got to watch some of this Pulse jet stuff. It's really funny. There's a guy who's like the Pulse jet king, and he puts Pulse jets onto he goes onto the salt flats or to the dry lake beds, and he's got a go-kart, and he's got 2 or 3 of them on there. So yeah.
Now, Scrap Iron Racing is asking if the leaded fuel is
It'll kill
killing
it.
his O2 sensor.
It will. It will.
I mean, that's what I've always heard.
Yeah, it will. And I'll tell you right now, Dallas spends the extra money to buy the unleaded fuel for his race car. I don't care, because I just don't care. I will run the leaded fuel on it. It will not run, and it won't last nearly as long. They are correct, but the amount of information that you're going to get right off the bat is so much better. And this way, you can you'll see it when it stops working, because once it warms up, it literally goes to either dead rich like 22 or all the way down to 5. So you'll know. But yeah, the race fuel does kill them, but I like the lead in my race fuel, so I'll take the hit.
Fun fact: just using engines hard kills them too. So it is all relative.
Yeah, right.
And most of the stuff we're doing and talking about doing with engines is stuff that was never intended to be done with them in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I could find the link as fast as I could here. I'm going to try real quick, but
you know what? We'll post the link up in the description of the video after the live.
Yeah, it sounds like
so anybody listen to this, later on, podcast style, or wants to come back and check it out, post the link in the video description. Will that work?
Yeah, that'll work. Now, I had to innovate also when I had my chassis dyno. I had to innovate wideband for that one. It was very stable. I did like it, but it didn't cycle nearly as fast as I thought it should. That's the reason why I went to the fast. And then the new innovation of the fast, the brand new one, has got the updated O2s. I forget which one it is. It's the one that heats up, and it's sampling like 30 times a second. So it's giving you really good information. So that's probably the most advanced thing my Slant 6 has got. I got to tell you though, is that. So yeah, I'll post the thing up for it.
So Dakota, I can reformat his question a little bit. He's asking about the accuracy of an air fuel of measuring your air fuel ratio when you're taking it from the collector as opposed to individual cylinders. Well, Dakota, on the dyno, a lot of your dyno headers are set up to take it on all 8 cylinders.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, is that how expensive that would be. Where most engines, you can just get most air fuel mixtures for like race cars are going to be a single one. If you get a dual one on each bank, you're already way ahead of that. So
Well, I'll tell you this. So when I went with Andy to dyno the mixed up boss,
mhm,
the dyno headers were designed to read air fuel on each cylinder. And the thing is on the dyno that at least let him know how to jet the carbs, because you have one jet in the carb for each cylinder when you have 2 4 barrels on a tunnel ring.
mhm.
And so you put a little bit different jets sometimes in different places because of the fuel distribution. So using it on the dyno is one thing to get the distribution right, and then measuring it in the car is something else. And so
Yeah,
for that, one on each bank is
overkill.
that's way better than just to say reading plugs only,
Yeah.
for example.
Bear Rose put it, this is exactly how I was thinking about. This is a better way of saying it. Narrowband O2 is like a temp gauge. It's either says cold or hot. A wideband is like that one that has degrees in it. So there you go. So imagine,
Good way of putting that.
yeah, there you go. Exactly. That's what I was saying. One's like a mathematical number. The other one is just basically it's either here or here. That's why I was kind of using the pendulum effect. This is just a more eloquent way of saying it. So yes, I agree with you. This is how it should be said, is like this. One is just, okay, it's somewhere here, where the other one is telling you exactly what number it is. You can convert it to something that's tangible. Like it will give you an actual number.
Danny boy, there are, you can have O2 on every cylinder, but man, that's a lot of hardware under the hood. Whole lot of
Yeah.
rungs welded into the headers and everything else. I know I wouldn't want all that, but on the dyno, it's actually kind of common.
Yes, we have them, and then we have when we do our stuff testing, we have an air fuel mixture, plus we have a temp gauge in every single one, so that way we know exactly what's going on. But we're testing things, so
Right.
that's, and tuning them too. So it's a whole. I mean, that's a whole thing. And then also too, like if you're running a tunnel ram, I agree with you. Just like you were talking about, you do them individually. So because depending on where the cylinder's at and what fuel it's getting, you lean this one up, you richen this one up. You could have 5 or 8 numbers difference between different holes. But then once you get it sorted out and you put it into the car, like you're saying, I have it in there just to tell me if I'm having an issue, because you'll find a dead hole by the air fuel mixture because it'll read differently than the other side. So I use it as not only for tuning, but it will tell you if you're having something going wrong with the engine. You'll know if you're getting water in it because you'll see it. It's good. You're going to start seeing all these numbers fluctuating. So for me, it's just a safety feature too. Tom, some more fuel industrial engines have factory O2 sensors for MG and propane. Well, there you go. A temp gauge is a good substitute, right? Right. Michael Schmidt. On my Flathead 6-cylinder, one carb fuels the first 3 cylinders, second carb fuels the last 3 cylinders. So I temporarily use airflow gauge for each cylinder, then I can adjust jets. Exactly. That's literally how I do mine. But when I have front 3 and a back 3 on my dual Doltras, there's really not much I can do for the carburetor. But on my 600, I have different metering rods for the back one than I do for the front one. I have it richer in the back, a little leaner. That's closer. I should call it the back, but farther away from the engine than closer to the engine. Same with the jets. So I do that on purpose. So yes, I do the exact same thing. It does make a difference. Every torsion, clocking, O2 bung, and sensor effectability of the sensor, and ultimately accuracy and reliability readings you can trust. You're right, but it's better than just pulling a plug out, and this will give you an accurate number. And they do tell you that you want to be 10 degrees off. How it angles in, and you're going to get a lot. It's the accuracy is within 1 or 2%. I'm cool with that. That's way better than what I was dealing with before. So, but yes, yeah, you're right.
I like the alcohol dragster there running. Yeah, there's nothing that says you can't run exhaust gas temperature. You can't run oxygen sensor and everything in every primary header
Yeah.
if you want to. It's just a lot of stuff to drag around under the hood.
It's a lot of data that you have to sort through.
You don't have to run any of it. You can just read plugs alone. But how much do you want to go to? That's really what it's about.
Yeah. Let's see. It was measuring airflows. I've always wondered how. Okay, that was that. Yeah, by
Yeah.
surprise here. Yep. Danny boys, I want 2 more intake manifolds and carbs for my Ford 240i D-stroke 300. Cut the centers out of the 3 intakes and make them tri-power. Yeah. You know what's really cool about that is that Clint got me one of his friends was selling a bunch of his Slant 6 stuff. I got an Offenhauser intake from him that takes 2 Holley 1 barrels. So it's literally all 3 of them are equal length. So I was going to try to open them up so that way I could put 2 350 Hollies on it. That would be really cool. So that's actually, yeah. So yeah, that would be cool. I like that.
Now, Michael Schmidt's asking an interesting question. And if you ask me, it's a Robin Peter to pay Paul type of question, but I'd like to hear your take on it.
Sure. Shane, couldn't you clock your carb 90 degrees so the front rear so yes, you can. I can tell you, I've done it on the dyno. It didn't make a hill of beans difference. Didn't. I've tried it. I've tried it to where the primaries were farther away and the secondaries were closer to the engine. So 90 degrees that way. I've tried it 90 degrees the other way. It didn't make any difference. If it was more efficient, I would notice it in mileage. It didn't change the mileage. It didn't change the 8th mile times. It didn't really do anything, honestly, because my intake manifold is I'm running a Offenhauser, so it's a really short one. It would make a difference if my intake manifold was one of those Aussie Speed ones where it was really far away. Yes, that would make a difference. But for how my intake is set up, it's still going to run leaner on the outer ones and it's going to run richer in the middle ones, no matter what. I've tried everything. So for me on my setup, and I think it's because of my cam selection, I have a 10. This cam's on a 108 lobe separation angle. It's installed on a 106 ICL. It's a pretty tight cam, but I did that for scavenging, so that way, it would like the RPMs that I'm trying to build that torque. I think because of that, it doesn't make any difference. But if I had a wider lobe separation angle with 0 overlap on it, or less than, very little overlap, probably make a difference, maybe, but I haven't seen it.
I can almost see that on a T-shirt there. Bear Rose says, "You exhaust temps with zoomies, it's visual."
It is.
Yeah.
Tri-power. Doesn't Clifford make a tri-power for a 300 yet? I don't know, man. I don't know on that one. I don't know.
Barrow's talking about the old tuning tricks.
Go ahead.
Well, when Andy was helping tune in the pits at No Name Nationals, he ran his hand from side to side on the exhaust to check if it was equal from bank to bank.
Side camera in the pit. I ran from side down the exhaust to check.
That was a good day of tuning for Andy.
Yeah. Was now that was the first year. What was? Oh, that's okay. Okay, that's when Al had slag hammer.
Yeah,
okay,
he ran an 812. It ran an 812 that first year.
Oh,
yeah,
oh
ran the best it's ever ran, I think.
Yeah. What has it gone down the track again since then? Has it?
To my knowledge, it hasn't run quicker than an 850 since.
Oh,
but now that's who knows what track. I don't know what details go into that, but
yeah. Aren't the 1405s much better for racing? Don't bother the 1406s instead of the 750 Carters. What's your take on this? I've never ran a 1406 carburetor. I've never.
So, okay, my biggest experiment with Carter, with the old AFB, or no, the AVS actually, was when I was a teenager. And I just remember what a bear it was to get that thing tuned. And by the time I was 18, I went to a Holley, and I never looked back. And so it's only been on a need-to basis I've dealt with any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just never been a fan.
Okay. So for me, literally, it's most of the stuff I had was on the street. And so when I first didn't know much about carburetors, on a V8, I had obviously Chryslers. I had a lot of Carter AFBs, and
Right.
and for me personally, they worked really good right out of the box. You drop them on, they work. They're decently tuned, and you're going to get a decent air-fuel mixture. And you never really had to touch them. The Hollies came out of the box. They ran good. I always had a little bit of leaks from them. And then it came down to like the Hollies were more tunable and easier to tune, but you had to know what you're doing. So when I was running the chassis dyno shop, I would tell them, do you understand carburetors? Do you want to touch it? Do you want to do this, do that? If they didn't really care about ultimate power, I would put Edelbrock, AVS or Carter AFB on it. If they were looking for the race stuff, I would put a Holly on it, but now I would definitely do a VRS. but yeah, that's how I did it. So, but this is exactly how I did it. Is I have 1405s for racing back in the day, and then I would do like a Carter or an Edelbrock for the street. Shane, okay, here we go. Shane, wouldn't 3 sets of dual side drafts be better for flow and ascent? Yes, but you can't RPM them enough to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, not with that head.
No. And yes, you're right. It would work great. There's actually a guy on the internet. You can actually Google it. It's an Australian one. He did this, but there's just not enough. There's just not enough flow in that. And the signal's crappy. It's just not there.
Those heads hit a wall. They're not a cross flow.
It's an L head, and it's in the. I think the best I've got out of these things are like 165 CFM on the intake, and that's just back cutting the valve and then doing some pocket porting. But I've tried the whole thing, and you can spend hours and hours and hours and get maybe 180 something out of it. But what have you done at that point? You kill some of the low end velocity on it, and I'm just trying to drive these things. So. Okay. Ooh, great question, Mr. Tom Brown. Shane, are you going to be running auto stick and Plan Z? I'm going to be running both. Here's the thing. This is going to be a test bed. I'm going to basically do exactly what the car was supposed to be intended for. It's going to be on a zipper. I'm going to take an engine. I'm going to try different intake manifolds. I'm going to try different exhaust manifolds. I'm going to try, I got a Ford top loader, 4-speed, ringed and faced. One of these guys that I know has got an A33. I have a TKX that I'll throw in there for a little bit, and I got some 904s. I got a 904 with the lockup. I'm going to try everything and see what works, because when you're dealing with low numbers, big changes make a big change, So,
spoiler alert, he'll like the 904.
I know.
It's just that thing is just made for it.
Yeah. And what's really cool too is that now that I'm building this adapter plate for a 904, the 904 that was in the Cookie Monster that's got all the trick dick shit in it.
Yeah, that's right.
It's going to go right in that sucker.
Forgot. Yeah,
it's going to go right into that thing, and I'm going to run it just like that. And
see, I forgot about that's another benefit. You did that for an A500, but it'll also let you do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I can put any transmission that went up to a small block. So a V6 transmission.
Yeah.
That was, that's a 5-speed. You can bolt that to a slant 6. So that's why I'm going to be doing this. So I can test all those transmissions, and I don't care about cutting the car up because the car is already cut up.
You can't cut that car up. There's nothing left to cut.
Right. So I can run Dodge Dakota 5 speeds. I can try everything, any type of transmission I want. And then you're dealing with low numbers, so the drive shaft doesn't have to be, this big honking aluminum 4-inch thing. Literally, it can just be, I've got a whole thing of drive shafts out there, and I could just literally take one, cut it, and put it down and put it in there. Doesn't need to be anything.
That car's got so many holes in it, you could probably cordon it up with a Dremel in 20 minutes. I don't think I'd want to try to cut anything else out of it.
Right. I've crawled around that thing, and I'm just like, whoa, man. I
think the glove box door has some structural integrity. No, there's no dash, I don't think.
No,
it's neat. It is neat.
If there's a flat piece of steel, it's got a hole in it.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Man, these 2 hours went by fast. We're already at 8:58.
Yeah, here we are at 1:59.
Wow. All
Look at
right, man.
that.
Anything you need to plug? Anything you want to plug? What you got going on Friday?
Nothing specific. Uh, got some good stuff coming up, but this year's just kind of it's cold and going along slowly. We are going to be working on getting some monkey bike rules out. We said we want to deliver some monkey bike rules by the end of January, and got some changes, some good changes coming to monkey bike.
Yeah,
And
I'm looking forward to this.
yeah, just the year's going well. Plansy's name should have been Whole Shot. That's the comment of the night right there from Dan.
Right? Boom. There you go.
Like that.
That's a good one, right? And from he's Shane, have you ever used aluminum drive shaft, and for what car? I actually have an aluminum drive shaft in the Cookie Monster. So if I were to ever go back to the 904 and the 8 3/4 with a naturally aspirated engine, which I very well could, I have a aluminum drive shaft from that, and it works awesome. It did help my 60-foot times. It definitely, I don't remember the exact number, so I'm not going to quote anything, but it definitely did help my 60-foot numbers quite a bit. And it did help with some vibrations that I was experiencing. But that was because because of the fluid dampener. We don't want to get into that. So yeah, never run the fluid dampener for drag racing. Just put it that way. Anyways, yeah, we're at 9. It's 9 o'clock, man. So once again,
flown by.
Yeah, if there's something, slantdailygarage@yahoo.com, come check, send me an email. I've got a few of them here since we've been doing this. And then on Friday, go and check John Wilburn at 7 p.m. Central Time on his channel. Yeah, this is the last Friday, is it? Oh. What do you gonna have a guest this?
With to be determined. I've got a few guests in the hopper. It's just a matter of getting their schedules together.
Got it. So, all right, gentlemen. Well, thank you guys for coming out. You guys have a great week. And once again, like I said, we do this for you guys. So if there's any questions, man, just throw them out there. We'll do what we can for you. And once again, we don't claim to know everything. We just know a lot about little stupid stuff. So
it's a blast hanging out with you guys on Wednesdays.
Yeah. All right. You guys have a good week. We'll check you guys later, right? Check you later, right? That's a funny one. Oh man.